What's up, family, and welcome back to the channel. It's nice to see you. So glad to have you back. Um, Today, I want to have this conversation on this question that really seems to be more of an assumption. I don't even know if we can treat this as a question in good faith, and that is, can atheists be happy? Can people who do not believe in God, can people who do not believe that they were born into sin, can people who do not believe that they are doomed to an apocalypse or an Armageddon, can people who do not believe that there is some guy watching them in their most private moments from a distant star, can those people be happy? The answer seems obvious to me, but we're going to entertain the question anyway. Before we jump in, if you haven't already, please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the alert notification bell, consider joining our community either on Patreon, the YouTube membership program, or through Discord. Also, consider volunteering. We could use the help. And as well, consider financially supporting the work that we're doing on the channel. If you're more interested in the work that we're doing, check us out on our Sunday sessions that we're having every Sunday. Let me see here. What else am I saying? Oh, the big thing. We have merch, and honestly, I think our merch is some of the dopest merch in the game. Not just because it's stylish, but because it really empowers. When you're wearing our stuff, you're sending out a message. All right, that's my sales pitchy stuff. Let's move on and jump into this question, into this conversation around this question. And the question is again, can atheists be happy? Now, other than ignoring the fact that believers have not provided a reliably workable, acceptable, or demonstrable definition of happiness to begin with, I'll take a more graceful approach. The primary issue with the question of can atheists be happy lies in the underlying assumption that emotions such as happiness, joy, love, and peace originate from supernatural rather than natural experiences. Now, this is a fairly common assumption, which is why I often encourage my colleagues and my contemporaries to that when people use terms such as spiritual, to actually listen to them and interrogate what they mean. And almost every time you're going to get something that is emotional, psychological, or social. And this just shows that so many people have attached themselves to the idea that emotions are spiritual. I mean, even today in modern language, when we talk about emotions, where do we say that they flow from? Typically, we say stuff like, well, it flows from my heart. You know, we're also a people who still say things like, you got to go with your gut. And while many of us, may think, well, those are just sayings, those are just phraseologies of how we express ourselves, but it is deeper than that. What we are showing is that we are not 100% grounded in an understanding that that our emotions, our intellect, and our intuition, it all stems from this organ, up here. So I do highlight this to say much of this issue comes from this idea that whether even if you're not a believer in a specific divine being, there is a large segment of human beings who have this, in my view, unsubstantiated view that emotions flow from somewhere other than natural experiences. And it's almost like they're disappointed when you find out that they flow from natural experiences. I think that's the first thing for me is I don't need them to flow from anywhere else, and they don't need me to need them to flow from anywhere else. That's just kind of the realm I like to live in. But so this presupposition overlooks the possibility that these deeply, I want to say deeply human emotions, but you can't even restrict this to just humans. So just these deeply living emotions, that's what I'll say for now, can arise from purely, oh, there's the word, purely natural, these deeply natural emotions can arise from purely natural interactions and experiences. And again, I'll fall back again here and say at this moment, we have absolutely no evidence, no substantiation to believe or even sort of speculate at this moment that these natural emotions are anything other than natural occurrences. Now, I am not saying that we won't ever find some evidence that something else is going on out there. That's typically not the posture of critical engagement. The posture of critical engagement is based on the information I have now. I have no reason to assume that there wasn't a natural explanation for this. This is my way of constantly reminding people that the supernatural or the spiritual or the religious explanation is almost is always a presupposition. It is always a superimposing this conclusion where processing has not taken place. Which is why I often use the word unsubstantiated. So, I don't have to determine if your claim is, untrue or not, as to whether or not I will give any credence to it. I can, use one of my shortcuts and instead just determine if it's substantiated or not. Is there anything that could possibly substantiate this conclusion? And in most cases, it's just not substantiated. And so the idea that emotions have to flow from somewhere else other than natural processes, there is no study that led us to that conclusion. There is no methodology that led us to that conclusion. That conclusion was a pre-baked in assumption. Yeah, pre-baked in assumption, presupposition. That's how you do it. All right. Um, so proponents of supernaturalism often claim that supernatural events, and by extension, the associated emotions, cannot be experienced without faith or belief. It's stuff like that I really like to hone in on because that is the argument many times. Well, why can't you experience God? Why can't I experience God? Well, you don't have faith. Your faith is blocking you from experiencing God. Things that are experiencing God, that are from God, you can't experience if you don't have faith or if you don't believe. All right, and this is backed up in Scripture. Jesus couldn't do miracles in places where people couldn't believe, where people didn't have faith. Well, see, the problem is now that this is laid out there, this stance inadvertently places universally shared human emotions such as happiness and love within the realm of the natural. If faith is a prerequisite for supernatural experiences, then atheists who do not subscribe to such beliefs must derive these emotions from natural sources. So that's the again to me that's sometimes the disingenuousness of a lot of these arguments. And it's me, I'm like, I don't even know why atheists are entertaining these conversations. I mean, maybe I'll learn because I've been in the closet for 10 years, so I haven't actually been engaging these conversations. And most of the time I'm like, my mind is blown. I'm like, oh my goodness, because the people that you're arguing with aren't arguing based off of any methodology. They're not arguing based off of any competence. They're not arguing based off of any know-how. They are arguing based off of contradiction, which means at that moment that they are either purposefully being deceptive or deluded. And either way, you can't really have a fruitful engagement with that person. The only fruit that I can see, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the only fruit that I can see coming from such a discussion when a person is in that type of mindset is for those who are watching the discussion to know just how foolish this shit can get. You know, but no, so it's a trap, that they've trapped themselves in, and I think atheists and critical thinkers and non-believers and skeptics alike should do well to pay attention to when they do kind of make those traps. Nope. If faith is a prerequisite for supernatural experiences, then anything that does not require faith to experience likely does not flow from the supernatural, you know? All right. Otherwise, you have one type of supernatural and another type of supernatural. And if you can't even define the first type of supernatural, you're going to have a really hard time determining which types of supernaturals are different, which is how you get 47,000 denominations of a different, of one religion, you know. That's also how you get, even within those 47,000 different denominations, a plethora, an amalgam, and a cornucopia, if you will. I do like that word. But you get a variety of different interpretations. Okay, so the presupposition that happiness and similar emotions require a supernatural source fails to align with observable reality. So first we see how this number one, it fails the premise. Number one, it fails because there isn't a definition presented, right? So people say, oh, atheists can't be happy. But then many times Christians are going to bake in the definition of happiness, God. And so therefore, for a Christian, happiness equals having God, whether or not I am something that is definitively happy or not. That's not a good faith conversation. That's not a good faith argument. You're talking to someone who is not going by an acceptable or reliably acceptable or even a reliable, workable definition of the word happiness. If you were to evidence all the symptoms of happiness, this person would say, yeah, but it still doesn't matter because you don't have God. Again, this person is either being deceptive or this person is deluded. Now, it doesn't mean that they're delusional about everything that they engage. And honestly, I make this face at anybody who would think that's what I'm saying, because nobody who is delusional in every aspect of their lives. That's not how anything works. So I absolutely, and I'm sorry, but I absolutely have the right and the vocality to say that a person who's not operating in their right mind on something is absolutely being delusional, without that meaning me saying this person is incapable of being, right-minded in any other areas of their lives. We have no, as far as I know, and I could be corrected on this, but as far as I know, we have no evidence of a person who is fully delusional. I don't even know what that would look like, you know. And man, that is an incredibly interesting thought experiment, because complete delusion would not just be me believing in imaginary friends. It would be me being deluded about my own existence as well. And now this is getting deeply philosophical, because who is me? Who am I? Who am I? Like, who is the who? Anyway, so that's philosophy. But so you get the point there. But yeah, the idea that happiness and similar emotions require a supernatural um, source is completely unsubstantiated. And sure, there may have been a time, I don't know, 1,300 years ago, where we could have just been like, yeah, that seems likely that these emotions are restricted to humanity, and this must be something that is a part of that divine spark, the breath of God, the exousia, the pneuma, the rhema. That's not breath, but hey. But over the past, again, maybe 1,300 years or so, we've been able to observe reality more. We have, as a society, wrestled with entropy well enough that we have managed to pull something out of this existence to where we have time to explore, which is probably the greatest dividing factor between us and other species, other than the ability to do business. But it's just we have what our organization as a species has given us: time and space. That's deep, isn't it? But has given us time and space to explore more beyond the necessities of survival. So we've been able to, explore the arts, and we've been able to explore exploration itself. We've been able to generate new ideas, new technologies, new industries, and all of these things comes from the gift of time and space that we were able to give ourselves by working together. And then by doing that, not only have we been able to learn more about ourselves, but we've also been able to learn an immense amount about the world around us as well, including the other animals that we share this planet with. And so when we look at observable reality, we see other animals that have these emotions. These animals that, for many Christian denominations, say that these animals have nothing to do with the divine spark, which was odd to me. Whole nother conversation. But for example, babies frequently experience happiness without any concept of God or an understanding of supernatural beliefs. And before you say, well, no, babies are innocent, they're just closer to God than anybody else. Well, remember, that's not what the scripture says, or at least that's not what most people believe about scriptures. I can't really ever say that's not what the scripture says, because the scriptures are not univocal and they say a lot of shit. But for the most part, people believe, Christians believe, that, I mean, that's the whole need for salvation, is that those babies are born in sin. And to show how strongly many Christians feel about these beliefs, many Christian denominations will not allow those Christian babies, outside of Catholics, as we know, to be baptized or participate in communion until they are of an age to make a decision to no longer be sinners. All right. That's that Ray weirdo guy theology. I probably could remember his last name if I tried hard enough, but I don't wanna. And I don't mean that in a dehumanizing way, but it is what it is. Um, but yeah, so babies have no concept of God. They have no concept of faith. They have no concept of belief. They have no concept of the supernatural, even though everything in the world may seem supernatural to them at that time, much like it did when we were not just babies ourselves, but babies as a species. hmm but what we see is that by looking at that, looking at babies, things like happiness, morality, joy, and other emotions are inherently natural and not contingent upon supernatural faith. So, just to kind of highlight again, first thing we pointed out is that believers who make this claim or kind of throw this question out here are people who have not provided a satisfactory definition of happiness to begin with, to even engage a conversation. Number two, the fact that atheists do describe themselves as happy and describe many moments that they've had as happy, demonstrates that faith is not a requirement for happiness. And then number three, that babies, and just the natural world around us, you see examples of joy, happiness, peace, and all types of things. So my goal is to highlight the flawed assumption in the question, can atheists be happy? By assuming that positive human emotions stem from supernatural experiences, proponents of this view neglect the natural origins of these emotions. The happiness observed in babies, other animals, and other non believing individuals underscores that joy, love, peace, and similar emotions are naturally occurring and do not require supernatural faith. Therefore, atheists can indeed experience happiness and other positive emotions through natural means. But let's explore some of the foolishness of this question. S- to ask this question, can atheists be happy, would also seem to validate the question, can Christians be sad? If you are filled with the Spirit of God all the time, or can Christians be depressed? Or can Christians or believers be anxious? And the answer to these questions are duh. You know, believers and non believers alike do not feel in any shape, form, or fashion that Christians are exempt from life and life's experiences because of their belief. So, why do we accept the audacity of believers to assume that somehow non believers are exempt from life experiences because of our non belief? For me, it's not a good faith conversation. And it's somewhat, not even somewhat, it's a damn non starter. No one, and forgive me for doing a no true Scotsman here, but no one who's seriously asking that question is seriously asking that question. At that moment, they're being patronizing, they're being condescending, or they're being deluded. Either way, I have no time for it. I do the work for people like them, but not with people like them. Again, as I said, I find those type of conversations fruitless. But I hope I've said something today that brings some value to your life. As you know, I enjoy doing these so much. I enjoy sharing my thoughts. I mean, but who doesn't? Who doesn't enjoy sharing their thoughts? But what I love about what's happening on this YouTube channel is that it's not just me sharing my thoughts. As much as I talk about some of the negative stuff that happens in my comments, one of the most beautiful things that takes place in my comments is that people from all over the world are finding each other and actually building with each other right here in the comments, and furthermore on Discord and all those other things. It's absolutely fascinating to me and beautiful. And so I enjoy these conversations because I hope that you understand that I am learning as much from you and your contributions as you may be learning from mine. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with me. Please, of course, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the alert notification bell, and all that jazz. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful.